Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want the committee to just imagine that Taiwan is under siege. The CCP, determined to crush Taiwan's resistance and prevent a U.S. response, activates a multi-pronged strategy, leveraging its control over global ports and shipping infrastructure. At the Panama Canal, one of America's most vital trade arteries, handling 40% of U.S. container traffic, Chinese-controlled ports at both ends suddenly close. Ships carrying food, oil, and military supplies are turned away because of technical difficulties, paralyzing the global economy. Gasoline prices soar, supermarket shelves empty, and supply chains collapse within days. China's state-owned ZPMC, which supplies 80% of U.S. port cranes, has equipped their cranes with cellular modems that create exploitable vulnerabilities. These cranes at U.S. ports mysteriously malfunction, halting critical operations. Factories close, millions lose their jobs, and the economy grinds to a halt. While this scenario may seem hypothetical, it is entirely plausible. Therefore, the canal must remain neutral, and the U.S. must ensure the CCP does not encroach on our vital economic and national security interests. In 2017, Senators Markey, Schatz, and Rubio urged President Trump to address China's aggressive maritime actions. Their warnings apply today as China's growing control over critical infrastructure, ports, and strategic waterways like the Panama Canal pose an unacceptable threat. America is sleepwalking into a carefully laid Chinese trap. And fortunately, people like President Trump aren't falling for it. I'm glad he's raised this issue. This dangerous complacency must end. That's why last week I introduced a Senate resolution to safeguard the Panama Canal from Chinese influence. It calls on Panama to expel Chinese entities in foreign control and honor its neutrality under the 1977 transfer agreement. The cost of inaction is too great. And I'll offer this up for anyone, but I think the biggest concern here is this Belt and Road Initiative. We've talked about it creating a debt trap, which is true. And building a bridge in Bangladesh is very different than this. I mean, there are reports of, the CCP building airports, and then when people are critical of the CCP, all of a sudden flights are canceled. Controlling a grid, they can turn it off and they can turn it off. And there's just no way on God's green earth that China can control the Panama Canal. And so however you want to define it, and I hope my Democrat colleagues, this is an issue that affects America that should not be partisan, and I hope they're not blinded by the fact that President Trump has come out so boldly on this. But we shouldn't tolerate this. The witnesses have stated they have operational control. We can get into the semantics of the Port Authority versus the control, but operational control of the Panama Canal is real by the CCP. The witnesses have also stated that a Chinese company got a sweetheart deal, a no-bid contract for control, operational control ultimately of these ports. So I guess I want to ask, because I've talked too long, I don't have much time for questions, but Professor Kantorovich, I do want to ask you, yes, as it relates to the treaty, and I'm glad Senator Cruz, or Chairman Cruz, has called this up, because there are real concerns about treaty violations here. What are the most blatant? What are the most obvious? Is it the unfair, is it the fact that we're being charged more? Is it the fact that these are Chinese-owned companies that are controlled by the CCP? What are the top 2 or 3 reasons that you would argue that they are, in fact, in violation of the treaty?
So again, I think the charges and fees are less of an issue because they don't discriminate across countries. We pay more because we use more, but it's not nationally discriminatory. The presence of Chinese companies, especially Chinese state companies, but not limited to them, do raise serious issues and concerns for the neutrality of the treaty. And I should point out, in relation to some of the earlier questioning, the canal, for purposes of the neutrality treaty, is not limited just to the actual locks of the canal and the transit of the of ships to the canal. According to Annex 1, Paragraph 1 of the treaty, it includes also the entrances of the canal and the territorial sea of Panama adjacent to it. So all of the air activities we're talking about are within the neutrality regime, the geographic scope of the neutrality regime in the treaty.
So the most, this is, I'm out of time, but the most dead-on hit here is the treaty specifically prevents foreign operations, and that's exactly what we have.
Yeah, so to the extent these companies are in fact de facto controlled by China, this is something that could threaten the neutrality regime of the treaty.
Okay.
Senator, may I make a point of clarification?
Sure.
You said that we all said that China had operational control. I don't believe that China currently has operational control over the Panama Canal. I'm not sure if any.
No, I didn't say all of you did. I said
Okay.
one of the witnesses.
All right. I will, but let me say this. I did agree that there was a threat posed by this ownership. I do think, though, that if your assumptions are correct, you are way understating the problem. That's right, understating the problem, because they also then control the Suez Canal and the Mediterranean Sea. And I actually have to admit, I'm a little confused as to why some of the senators asking these questions, Senator Blackburn, aren't more concerned about the biggest port in the United Kingdom being run by the Chinese. Petraeus in the port nearest Athens, one of the biggest ports in the Mediterranean, is not just run by a Chinese-linked company. It's run directly by a Chinese-owned company. And I was there. So you're on to something, but if you're just focusing on Panama, that's only part of it.
No, I agree with you. I think the difference here is that we gave it away. Huge mistake. Both Missouri senators voted for it back then. Huge mistake. But the one thing we got out of it, was a guarantee of neutrality, and that's the issue here.